Yep.
All right. We are gonna focus a little bit more on the law specifically now. So,
Sure.
You've heard about the new modeling law
Yeah.
in Israel, right?
Definitely.
What do you think about the law and how that's going to affect all these women with eating disorders and the modeling industry in general?
Your question is divided into two.
Right. Okay.
I think the second part of the question I can't answer. I can't predict the future. I don't know how it's going to affect actually. I can say my opinion, a professional opinion about the law and my hopes and expectations. Well, as I guess from what I was describing before and the way I actually introduced eating disorder and the work I do, I'm clearly a big supporter of the law, no doubt about it. Before we get into it, as you probably know from the research, there are people who are objecting to this law, clearly. And their reasons are valid, actually very valid. I guess there are also reasons why this law actually was never, it's the first law in its kind in the world. And I'm not sure in other countries actually if it can be a problem. Let me explain. There are several problems with the law. Number one, some people in the more liberal part of, I guess, of the spectrum would say that it actually contradicts, in a way, human rights. Because basically you're coming to people and tell them you can work in a certain industry unless you look A, B, C, D. And that can be a problem in some places. That can be challenged by courts. I can actually see in some places in the state or so, and in Europe it can be challenged by Supreme Court. Because basically this law is saying only if you look A, you can be a model. Well, it's a problem. So that's number one. Number two, there have been actually several models here in Israel, or leading models, who came out against the law publicly. And of course, they're afraid for their jobs, but that's not only that. What they were saying is, you don't take into consideration that some women just have to be thin genetically. They don't starve themselves, they're not anorectic, and you punish certain women just for being thin and you're not allowing them to do the job, and they don't actually gain the way they look because they starve themselves, or they're just lucky. It just happened to. There are a lot of women now who are just lucky. They're thin, that's the way it is. Genetics and body, and that's the way they look. And they say, well, how come we're not going to work? Because what? It's not our fault that we are thin. So that's another problem. However, and it's not that it wasn't debated before, and it's what it was in the media before. However, when you take as a whole and you factor in what the good of the society is, there is no doubt that this law is important. It's a one of a kind, and it's a revolutionary in many ways. Now, we need to be realistic. It's not going to change the way young women think about themselves now. That's not what's going to happen. And I'm not sure how it's actually going to change the industry. But what it did, and I know it for a fact as a therapist, as a parent, as whatever, as a lot of other things, as a citizen in this country, that it's brought the whole issue into the focus of attention. People started to talk about it, about eating disorder, about body image, about the messages that we send. It's created a huge buzz, discussion. I was called to my child's school. I mean, I have an older child who's exactly your age. They called me into the school to lecture. There was a big buzz about it. It's brought into the attention that as a society we are failing. We are as a society who have to take care of you and teach you to be successful and to feel good about yourself. We are failing. We are failing. We are miserably failing because of greed. That's the only thing. Greed. Greed. Selling more, making more money, we're basically failing to protect you. And that's where the problem lies. And the law brings people to talk about it and deal with it, and eventually to create a change, because talking is not doing anything. I mean, people are talking. Every week they bring somebody who's talking, crying, and she's anorectic, and everybody's saying it's so terrible, and then, she went for a diet and eating lettuce for a week. It's not, but this is actual law, and laws have tendency, eventually it's going to sink in. Slowly and surely, again, nobody's going to see overweight women here in magazines, but it's going to change. it's going to change, and the message is basically saying, yeah, of course, you have to be thin, you have to be pretty, you have to look well, you have to be able to present yourself, but you don't have to starve yourself into that. You don't have to be ridiculously thin like a 6-year-old girl in order to be pretty. It can be different, it should be different, and it's our job as a society to protect you and make sure that the images that we are sending are different. So I think it's helpful, it's important. But it's a long process. It's like try to change a society in the way people think. It's not. It's basically it's one. Maybe it's like smoking. The fact that there are so many rules against smoking. I mean, everywhere in the world. I mean, the state now in Israel actually, people are smoking less. Maybe yes, maybe no. I'm not really sure about it. But at least it brings the topic into the focus of attention. At least people know, at least people talk, at least there is responsibility of the society to protect people. And that's what it is here. Whether it's going to change the way you're going to think about yourself, maybe yes, maybe no. But it's going to send different messages. And it's going to slowly, and it's also going to at least take the extreme out of the law. It's not only, by the way, the BMI, the modeling, it's also the Photoshop law, which goes together. It's basically one unit. It's not the same law, but they're both introduced into the Knesset, which is our parliament, basically by the same person at the same time. And they goes end by end, which basically the message, the images that we're going to send to you young women today are going to be somewhat different. Not extremely different, but they're going to be somewhat different. The message are going to be, it's not if you're going to be sick, that's what beauty is. Yes, you need to look pretty, you need to look healthy, you need to be able to, and also be a model is not necessarily being to gain 50 pounds. You need to be able to present yourself, to walk, to be more professional. But again, as a society, it's about sending the message that the beauty and appearance are not necessarily have to do with causing yourself damages and be sick and be out of the extreme. Just to change a little bit, to skew it a little bit. And in that sense, it does a lot. There is a lot of buzz. It comes to the surface, people are talking about it, people are dealing with it. It's the beginning, it just came into effect now, so it's hard to tell. But I'm sure it's going to change. It's a law. I mean, eventually, the industry will have to obey the law. It's going to take them some while, and they're going to scream and shout, but they're going to, they need to, it's business. They're not going to be criminals. They're just going to change it. Of course, I'm sure there are going to be other problems. They're going to lie, they're going to cheat. But eventually, it's going to change the industry slowly and surely. And hopefully, maybe it's going to change a little bit the way society thinks, so it's very valuable.
So eventually you think the Okay, so eventually you think the law can ultimately maybe lower those unrealistic expectations that you mentioned earlier and eventually maybe help those psychological disorders at this point.
It's a step into the right direction. I mean, I'm an adult, so I'm a realistic person. I'm also work in a field that, on one end, I don't think you can be, as a clinical psychologist, if not optimistic by nature. You have to believe that eventually people will get better and people will do better with their life and things. And you come across in the clinic every day because people come to you, they're depressed. I mean, life sucks, nothing going to work. That's the way it's going to be forever. And you have to be optimistic. It's going to be okay. Now, do I know it's going to be okay? Can I actually promise people it's going to be okay? It's like a parent and a child. Of course we tell our children, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. Can we actually guarantee that? No, of course not. The same here. Can we actually say it's going to be okay, that it's going to change? It's somewhat naive. But, as Mao Zedong said, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. And that's a major step. That's the one step that was required in terms of legislation, in terms of the government, in terms of the industry, to take responsibility and start to change the way society look and view things. And that's a step into the right direction. It's the first step, it's the beginning. Nobody's really expecting that, you're going to see a major drop, but at least it's going to bring the focus and attention, and at least it's going to start to change. and it was required a long time ago actually, and I'm very glad that it was done, and it's a step into the right direction. And again, we are all realistic. We are adult people. I mean, we are not children. We know the society we live in. We understand that change takes time. We understand there's so many factors takes into place, but you have to start somewhere, and that's the right direction.
Right. And do you think this sheds a positive light on Israel? Does it make it a role model for other countries?
Interestingly enough, I have to tell you on a personal note, I never thought about it. You have to tell me that. I guess the reason why you're here showing it's true, probably. I don't think we actually thought about it before. I don't think anybody really thought about it before. It was interesting when you actually called your mom, whatever. Then we started to think, I started to think, and I guess it's probably true. I guess it's probably true to a beginning. I have no idea why this legislation starts here. Again, eating disorder has nothing to do with Israel. It's a universal disease. The number, that's why you can put it into the DSM, which is the DSM Diagnostic Criteria Manual, which is the psychiatric, which is the book of all the psychiatric disorder in the world. That's how you diagnose people, and it's universal. It comes up every several years, every about 5 to 10 years, the new edition. It's by the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, but that's actually the Bible of our field all over the world. What I'm trying to say, that our field is international. It has nothing to do with nation. The same with eating disorder. The rates are the same all over the Western world. It has nothing to do with Israel. The fact that actually it came out here, I believe and I think, and it's maybe another kind of a bonus or side effect. Sure, it does show, I think, present a good image of us here as a progressive society, and I think most important, as a normal society. You know, you've been traveling around, and it's